pedestrian here and they want to cross. It's up to the motorist, depending on where they're at, if they want to stop and allow the pedestrian to cross. It does not give the pedestrian the right to just push that button, and then if it's not safe or there's not a gap in traffic, they just walk out. The same rules still apply if you're crossing without those lights there. But again, it's meant to enhance awareness of the crossing.
Is there any general data how often a pedestrian pushes a button on that type of thing and says just walk, thinking that cars have to stop?
It's an education. We've always talked about education, enforcement, and engineering. I mean, it's the education component to it.
Right.
I think they've done a really good job out here, just with the crossing guard and everything else. And just in my personal experience, at times when I'm approaching it and somebody pushes it, I've never seen anybody just push it and walk out. They usually push it. And for the most part, vehicles stop when they push it and let them go.
Right.
They're not required to. Again, it's not a red light, it's not a traffic signal, but as a courtesy that, they do stop and let them go. It gets a little dicey, I guess, if both, one motorist coming on one direction doesn't stop and the other one does, then the pedestrian might get confused. But the whole idea of it is just to raise awareness. It's, as you're approaching it, if you see those lights going off, even if the pedestrian pushes it, has a gap in traffic and crosses, they stay flashing for you. Could set it right from 15 to 22 seconds or whatever it is, however you set it. They push it, they cross, it's still flashing. Someone who's coming southbound, now there's no pedestrian in the crosswalk, but they see it flashing and they're aware now. They're, they might slow down a little bit, they're looking, it's just meant to, you're not just going through there with no recollection or no idea that you're actually going through an intersection and that there's more activity than just you. So those are three things that could build off of each other in those kind of potential. They're all capital improvements. They all have, not small dollar amounts that we have in our budget for yearly, add signs here type of stuff that we do. So it's a bigger discussion than just this board, but it doesn't come out of this board unless you guys want it to. So it could be, and I say, Mark, it could be one or any combination. They could build off of each other. It may be that phase one or the first recommendation is to do some of the pavement marking things that is in the budget and can be done easily with the legends on the road and the crosswalk markings, and there's some things we can do there. We could potentially even eliminate the hatched out area and almost create these curb lines with markings, without the actual physical construction of the curves, but get those two lanes on Cedar Boulevard next to each other and have a painted out, kind of bulb out area that, but it's not a refuge like it would be if it were curved. So that, it could be something like that. And then, seek funding or grants for other things. There's different grants that would be available for pedestrian safety type stuff, like the RRFBs. One that was done out here was done with an RLE grant. That's a yearly grant. That's the kind of project they like to fund. So there are options.
Michael, regarding the markings, when I look at Holly Crest Drive here, would we be able to recommend putting the markings in to make that one lane at the intersection? Yeah. So you wouldn't have them left and right against each other?
Yeah.
Because the least expensive thing on here would be the pavement markings.
Yeah.
Okay.
With Holly Crest as wide as it is and the angle that it comes down at, I think no matter how we marked it, you're still going to have, it's so wide that someone that wants to turn right is going to end up here, someone that wants to turn left is going to end up here, and you're still going to have, it's still going to operate the way that it does today if you don't physically make them be where you want them to be.
So also, just to clarify, so theoretically you could, without building out the curves, you could put beacons in.
The what?
Yes. Yeah. You could put, right. So you just drew it as progression, but it's not necessarily required progression.
Yep.
Do you have, we did something similar with the markings on that Meadowcroft intersection, which is also funky in a sort of a similar way. To me, that works so much better to have those pavement markings, because you can see where you're supposed to go. You're not supposed to go on the yellow part. And I wonder if you've gotten any feedback from people about that.
I haven't gotten any feedback. I'll just reference myself. I think it makes a difference. You know, I drove through it after they were done, and I think it makes things clearer. I think for the motorist who isn't maybe familiar with it, it helps them. And it kind of defines where we want vehicles to be, as opposed to the vast wasteland of pavement that was out there before. So, but I haven't heard any feedback. Good or bad.
I mean, I'm assuming if we wanted to go ahead with the physical bump out, that process, that's several years in making. If you have to apply for funding,
it's a commission question. I know they're, you know, it's budget time now, and Mr. Commissioner Silverman's on here. I know Commissioner Rainey's also interested in this intersection. I think it's in her ward. Is it in her ward, Commissioner?
It's in her ward, and forgive me that we didn't hear the audio for most of your presentation. So we're finally able to hear you now. Short answer is yes, it's in her ward. My question was, did you say, and I missed, any kind of dollars and cents guesstimate on what the cost of those physical bump outs would be?
I hadn't quite gotten there yet.
Would you have that number this evening?
Yes.
I was afraid I missed that part of the movie. Sorry. I saw was Bob talking in pantomime without any words underneath. So I'll be curious for the rest of your presentation.
You didn't miss it. So what we're showing on here conceptually is right now you have the curb line on Cedar. Let me see if this exhibit shows it better. My fingers are too big. You have the curb line, and then you have a grass strip, and then you have the sidewalk. So on our exhibit, the way we're showing it is we would create a new curb line, and I'm trying. We would create a new curb line and just fill behind that curb. It would be grass. So it's not as expensive as some other ball bounce that you see that are full concrete. So really, it's just the construction of a few hundred linear feet of curb and filling it with topsoil and seeding it and that kind of thing. So there's not, there's no roadway widening or asphalt or big concrete areas. So our estimate, even though I don't have specific unit costs, but my estimate for the physical roadway improvements, the new ADA ramps, the new curbing, is about $25,000 to $30,000. The signal devices, the RFBs, for the entire system and installation. So it's 2 foundations with poles and the controller and the signs and the solar panels and the push buttons. We did one maybe 2 or 3 years ago up in McCandless at a school. That same system with 2 on each side of the crosswalk at that time was $30,000 for the installation. That was the construction. And then, there was maybe $5,000 with permitting and design and things like that. With the costs these days, I would estimate that to be more like $40,000 to $50,000 for that system. So just between those two, you're starting to get upwards of 6 figures. By the time you throw in all the pavement markings and signs and stuff, I think if you looked at this whole thing as a one project deal, if you're looking for a number to budget, I would recommend 100,000.
Well, I like that you presented it in the pieces, so that way, if a commission wanted to do it in a scalable effort, it's nice to get your estimates on what the individual pieces are. Also, my correction that this is Commissioner Flynn's ward.
Okay, yeah, I knew Commissioner Rainey was interested. She had asked, hey, when we talked about this, she wanted to know what we talked about.
Yes, she is interested, and she may be on the line listening. But again, technically it's Commissioner Flynn's ward. But thank you for all the information.
If we go for that plan where we're putting like topsoil and grass in, and who is responsibility for the maintenance of that? Like cutting the grass or trimming hedges or whatever? Yeah,
so I think this whole corner is municipal. The bottom right, or the bottom left corner, that's all municipal property.
Okay.
The bottom right side, I think is a church,
Sure.
and it would be no different than whatever landscaping they have now.
Okay, so it essentially extends their
Yeah.
yard.
Yeah, I mean, a majority, a big part of everybody's front yard is technically in the right of way, but they still cut the grass, so it's, it would be theirs to maintain, just like shoveling the sidewalks and everything else.
It's what you did on Hood Ridge.
Yep.
Corner of Hood Ridge, extend that
Correct.
property
Yep.
and make it smaller.
Right.
I look at this and I see, I think we're an advisory board, we can't make the final decision, we send it to the commissioners, I would recommend all three.
Well, first, is there anybody from the community here to speak on this issue? Let's come on up. We'll take you, whatever order you want. Please state your name for the record.
Thank you. My name is Richard Sarin, 515 Salem. Second house up from the senior section. So I've lived there for a long time, so I've seen most of those accents and a few more. I guess 2 points. One is I just have a question. In your video, were you able to see near misses? Because I think obviously the statistics don't necessarily show that. In my experience, and I think the people here will tell you, and my friends who pass there all the time will tell you almost daily that misses pedestrians. Vehicles.
Yeah, well, I watched the 6 hours of data. We're able to actually watch it at 2, 4, or 8 times the speed. So there, big chunks of them. The crossing guard was there. That was relatively smooth operating, as expected. But I did concentrate a little bit on the times when the crossing guard wasn't there. I didn't see any near misses for the most part. People were crossing when they should have crossed. Cars were stopping if somebody was in the crosswalk. So I didn't see anything, but it's such a small window that we're looking at, obviously, compared to every day and every minute of every year. But I didn't see anything on the video that we got.
Thank you. And then the other point would be, my opinion on the clarification. I think you really have, in my view, hit the key points. All those the different suggestions all address different parts of the problem, both from the vehicle and from the pedestrian vehicle. The one that really strikes my attention, and my initial thought was the active signal is the one that makes the most sense to me, because you've tried multiple signals, passive signals down there, signs, crosswalks. At one time, they had a stand out in the middle of that crosswalk with the sign saying pedestrian crossing. They concluded the last time it was taken away after it was smashed.
Yeah, those don't last anyway.
So, in my view, the passive signals are not insignificant, but it's not sufficient. And I would strongly recommend we consider among the solutions, certainly the active signal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul Watsky, 469 Willow. A little disappointed that the analysis of the intersection didn't include any data on speed that drivers take through this 25-mile-an-hour road on Cedar, nor any data on whether they do or don't yield to pedestrians that are waiting to cross. My understanding is that the pedestrian has the right of way if they make their intentions clear. So it's up to the driver whether they wish to stop or not.
Correct.
If you
The vehicle, that there's always confusion on it. So the vehicle code is very clear. A motorist must yield to a pedestrian who's in the crosswalk. But the pedestrian's responsibility is to not enter the crosswalk until it is safe to do so and there's no vehicles coming. So just stepping, if there's a car 50 feet from the intersection and it's going 25 miles per hour, you can't just step off the curb and say, I'm in the crosswalk, you have to stop. You can't step off the curb at all until it's safe to do so. Once you step off the curb when it's safe to do so, then if a vehicle comes while you're in the crosswalk, then they have to stop. So it's the pedestrian's responsibility on when it's appropriate to cross.
Is that a Pennsylvania?
Mm-hmm.
Never lived in a state that had.
Yeah.
Cars, I guess I've been to China where it seems to be the rule, but that's the only other place I've lived, that cars take precedence in the speed. What about the speed? Is there any data on the average speed, or is that not part of it?
I don't know if I didn't put the speed monitor out there, huh? I can put it down and the rock for a while. Earlier this year. Yeah. I think right at the entrance, further down and bring it back because yeah, I was gonna say it'd be hard to, you'd almost have to do a manual spot speed study to do it, because if you put the speed trailer anywhere near the intersection, anybody that stops for pedestrians or stops to turn, it's gonna record that vehicle as a, you know, a 0 or a 5, and it's gonna skew the numbers. So you'd almost want someone manually out there only getting the speeds of vehicles that are going through and aren't slowing down or impacted by the activity that's going on there. So typically at an intersection, you can't get speed data that's accurate.
If there is a speed issue for the cars on Cedar Boulevard, what would be the options?
Enforcement.
Yeah,
but
because you're not putting the speed bumps.
No. Cedar Boulevard, this board's been approached by people on Cedar. It's not a qualifying type of a roadway for traffic calming. It's a collector. So
it's purely an enforcement issue.
Yeah, and you know, as we've talked about in the past, you know, Lieutenant Green might not like when I say it, but they can't really even ticket you until you're going 36 miles per hour faster in a posted 25. So
and you don't have radar.
Yeah.
Now, but if we, just to clarify, if we were to opt to narrow the roadway, that would slow down traffic.
Correct. All of these things cumulatively, just like in the traffic calming plans that we come up with, we're trying, you know, cumulatively, they have an impact on awareness, speeds, safety.
Casey Ford, 201 Beacon Drive. Thanks for the analysis and report, and I appreciate if you explain the complexity of that whole intersection. You probably got to think about the speed. I'd say, from my perspective, the one benefit of having an active signal is, as a driver or as a pedestrian, it can be a confusing intersection. Even this morning, I dropped my son off at Jefferson. I come down Salem and make right on Cedar. Because you're sitting there, you're watching the cars coming this way, you're trying to figure out the Holly Crest cars are going to turn this way or that. You don't know, you know, pedestrians are crossing. If you have an active signal, it's kind of a message that everybody's going to get, hey, this is priority right now. This is where you focus your attention. So, you know, it's someone who walks there regularly and drives there regularly. I think it would be really important signal to drivers to pay attention and save some lives.
Please.
Rebecca said, I was at 515. I don't know how many years ago, several years ago, I'd say at least 6 or so. There was an undercover policeman dressed like on the Salem side. He was crossing his tents, the Holly Crest side. He has a cell phone, big man. He just walks out and the crosswalk. And anybody who didn't stop, he had a fellow policeman down there. Stop. Yeah. Kind of a sting operation. I couldn't just good morning. But I mentioned to him, I said, I've stood there a long time before I could walk out. And he said, just walk out. It's their responsibility to stop. You have to initiate that by stepping out. That's what he told me.
I didn't do that one.
So I believe that.
Was he undercover or was he impersonating?
No. Convinced me that he was undercover. But what's the difference between ideal pedestrian in the crosswalk who comes off Jefferson and turning right onto Cedar? There's a yield sign. That car has to stop. Right? And why?
I think the answer is that is a yield sign for traffic control. So
Pedestrian is not.
it's not a vehicle. Like you're looking traffic.
Well, yeah, the yield sign is a regulatory traffic control device, which means that by law, motorists have to obey it. Now, the law does say that motorists have to yield to pedestrians in the crosswalk.
Yeah, so
It
I
does-
appreciate that.
Correct, but the law is also very clear in that it says the pedestrian can't enter the crosswalk until it's safe to do so. So the pedestrian doesn't get to just jump out into the crosswalk to make cars stop.
Oh, no, I
Yeah.
understand. But if I start and, I will try to judge when I think that car will be safely.
Correct.
Or he has
Yep.
plenty of time to see. And
Yep.
I will start.
Yes, at that point, it's his responsibility to yield.
Okay. But some don't.
Correct.
Okay, I'm allowed to get mad.
So the,
Thank you.
Hello, thank you. My name is Paul Rapp, 120 Rochester Lane. I'm here to maybe summarize a lot of the points already made. Thank you for this presentation. I think the biggest thing I want you to take away from this is that, from my perspective, I really do not want the child to die as a pedestrian getting about to happen. And I worry that if it does happen, it will happen at this intersection. I had a near miss 2 weeks ago. I got much, so thank you for whoever got in here. I stopped for a pedestrian, going on Cedar. Someone behind me went around. I was hit that pedestrian. That was tough. I had their detail case. That matters. I really like all the proposals, and I'm confident that we will have some things. I do think one point that we aren't talking about much here is we talk a lot about traffic control. We don't talk a lot about, I guess, the pedestrian experience. And specifically, it's really easy for us to cross crosswalks. I don't know if that was recorded in the data, but in this case that I talked about, it was a middle school student system all along. And these kids are never going to, have the ability to take that first step into the crosswalk. Their parents can never tell them. And so just kind of in summary, I want to make sure we uphold that loving status of walking community. And that requires us to invest in cases where maybe a slight degradation to the traffic experience, which seems to be this case, while further improving the ability for us to walk, not walk. There's a lot of other places we can improve. This is number one thing.
can I ask, were you going northbound and stopped and they went through that hatched out area around you?
I was, so officially, I was coming in from Salem and turning right. And I turned, and I'm actually talking because it was a student in that car, which I covered. So I just saw this student and I was encouraging him, like, hey, I'm stopping, please cross.
So they went around you on Salem because it's wide.
They went around me and see, they were on Cedar.
Okay.
I took the lane, I took the space on Cedar and stopped.
I see.
I was able to take a wide turn because, as you mentioned, it's a wide lane dropping us. So, yeah. Thanks.
And also, I'll just mention as he points out at that intersection, actually, sometimes when you're going on Cedar, and you want to make a left onto Salem, cars will go around you.
Oh, yeah.
Just,
Right.
okay. I mean,
Yep.
I get they're not supposed to. Or is that illegal in that spot in that space?
You're not allowed to pass on the right.
Fair enough.
But this would eliminate that
That,
because you'd have to wait.
Just one other thought pulling on
Sure.
everybody. I think beyond the time period that you specifically looked at for accidents, a crossing guard was if they're seriously injured at that intersection, where someone did exactly that. First car stopped, woman went around that car, hit the crossing guard, and did serious damage.
Discussion? Thoughts?
Well, as a person that also uses the intersection, I like. Even if it's a phased approach, to implement all three recommendations.
Yeah, the added benefit, and as you mentioned, Michael confirmed, it can make the road. Our speed would go down with that as well. And turning around the sides, I think it makes visibility better. People, whether they come from Hollycrest, Cedar, or Salem.
Well, I mean, it also makes it easier for people to judge getting across it because they have just cut off a big chunk of space.
Cut off 10 feet. Yeah.
Cut off 10 feet, so it's easier to judge 20 feet than 30 feet, for sure.
Now, the presentation to the commission for any recommendation. Do we? If we suggest a phased, obviously it will be sort of a phased approach. Do we order what preference we prefer the phases to be attached?
You can chime in if you want, Commissioner Commissioner Silverman, but I would present it that way. I think that if this board's long-term goal were to see all of it implemented, I would say that be a recommendation. And when I get to the commission agenda session to discuss it, it'll be a similar discussion where it's, hey, here's some options for this. The traffic board would like to see all of it, but here's how we can potentially do it in phases. Here's how we could potentially fund it, you know, with monies other than capital funds. And here's some grants that are available. So I would take that. I would do that.
Okay.
Is that are you okay with that approach, Commissioner Silverman? You think that makes sense?
I'm afraid I didn't hear all of Bob Wayne's suggestion. Do you mind repeating that, Bob? Sorry.
Well, it's a question of whether we make recommendations as to what phased approach should be taken, or we decide to recommend everything. It gets presented, and then the discussion of how it gets phased just gets discussed at the commissioner level, if that makes sense.
So yeah, so I suggested that if this board as a group decided that they in the long term want to see all of these things, then their recommendation should just be for all of it. And then when I get to the discussion session with you folks, I can discuss, you know, potential funding sources and potential phasing options and grants that might be available and things like that. I don't think they have to recommend it in phases or anything like that.
I think, you know, you've both of you were right in saying, what does the board recommend? The presentation will be such that it'll be presumably have the cost of all three pieces. And the commission, you know, as part of the presentation, will have to then decide, you know, all at once in phases or what have you. I know there is support among commission to do something, but this will give us a chance to see what exactly that something is. Does that give you enough direction to work with?
I think we're on the same page.
I think we're on the same page.
Good.
Any further discussion? Somebody want to make a motion, or I'll make a motion? I mean, I personally, I move to adopt the three recommendations presented by Gateway Engineers for that intersection to be implemented in accordance with whatever the commission is the most appropriate.
I will second that motion for the physical improvements, the pavement markings, and the rapid response flashing beacons to the commission.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All against? Motion passes. Have a good evening.
Hopefully we can make the rest of these quick.
Yes.
I know everyone likes to go. There was a lot to it. Yeah, there's a lot to it, and you know,
Yeah.
people are interested, so.
Explain how we get.
Okay, gave me a chance to get tech support on the phone. That's so I can actually hear you folks. So thank you.
So Lyndon, do we want to move on to the next one?
Yeah, the request for pavement markings on Lincolndale Drive between Blades and Kirk.
Yeah, we reviewed this. It is, you know, a little bit windy, a little dark because of where it is, depending on the time of day, and it's, you know, it's wide enough for two lanes. It's about 24 feet curb to curb. So we are recommending that because of the volume of traffic that's using it and the geometry of it and the poor lighting at night to mark it with a double yellow there's double yellow from the public works access up to Cedar. We're saying take it from the other side of the public works access up to Kirk.
Is there a problem for the driveways that are on that roadway? Okay.
Nope, there's a double yellow all the way down Cedar and lined with driveways and
Yeah,
the double, there's nothing illegal about turning left over a double yellow line. Nothing in the vehicle code.
any questions or comments? Anybody wanna make a motion?
I'll make the motion to put the double yellow line on Lindenwood Drive between Blades and Kirk.
From the maintenance entrance.
Yep.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so all the way from the.
So it goes from the matrons, the public works entrance to Cedar. Now there's a little space.
Right.
So from the other side of the public works entrance. And then, you know, at Glades Drive, we would do the dashed double yellow to leave an opening there. And then I did talk to the manager. It's Public Works doesn't do double yellows, so we'd have to get a contractor to do it, and given the time of year, it may not be till the spring. So let's if we get the recommendation, we can get it on the list.
I second the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
All against? Motion passes. New business. Request for review of pedestrian crossing signal timing on Cedar Boulevard at Greenhurst Drive. Is there anybody here to speak on that?
I can tell you what phone call was about.
Okay.
Some lady, I can't remember her name, I apologize, had called in and said that she was concerned when cars are coming down Greenhurst towards the high school and they're making the left onto Cedar, or either way, that they have a green light, but pedestrians also, there's a red light on Cedar, so they have the safe way to cross, and there's nothing slowing the traffic down with the turn, like they're in the blind spot of the cars, they're making the turn one way or the other. And she was just curious if there was anything they could do to either delay that a little bit or a green arrow or something. So when the pedestrians had the right of way crossing, because it was a red light on Cedar, the traffic coming off of Greenhurst had something to delay them a little bit to give them time to get across the right way. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm.
I thought we had like a 15-second delay on all of our, we don't have.
It's not 15. This corridor has a 3-second advance. So
with this intersection
that plays into the responsibility of a motorist to yield to a pedestrian in the crosswalk. So what was implemented years ago is you give, when the side street's going to get a green light and you're going to get the walk across, the walk signal goes walk for 3 seconds exclusively that gets the pedestrian into the crosswalk. Then when the light turns green, then the motorist has to yield to them. When they went at the same time, then pedestrian kind of had to wait to step off the curb until the cars were done. So it all plays into the same stuff we've been talking about. This is a new signal that we did a couple years ago with the Green Light Go grant. We already added an advanced left turn phase coming out of Morgan. You can't have that on Greenhurst because it's only one lane. You have to have an exclusive lane to have that arrow.
Sure.
I'll have to look and see if this has the 3-second advance. I don't know.
Just make sure that the way.
Yeah. Yes, that's my note.
Right.
And you know, if it's not there, I'll come back and let you know. It's just a controller modification. Right. And then there's some signs too, but they just turn into sign pollution.
Any new business for the floor? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All against? Okay. We're adjourned. Thank you very much.
Have a good evening, everybody.
Have a good time, Steve.